The alien students had no idea what they were in for. Humanity had always been the underdog, the species who fought tooth and nail against every conceivable enemy. Now they were the subject of an intergalactic educational experiment, a trial designed to measure the survival skills of different species in a controlled, but hostile environment. The alien species, a combination of brutal, ruthless warriors from all corners of the galaxy, had scoffed at humanity's place in the experiment. To them, humans were primitive, unrefined, weak, and destined to fail. But they had underestimated one thing: humans were survivors. Sergeant Ellie Mercer was no stranger to hardship. A decorated soldier and a hardened veteran of Earth's military campaigns, she'd faced everything from alien invasions to wars that had stretched humanity's resilience to its breaking point. But none of that had prepared her for the trials she was about to face. Watching as an entire class of alien students, trained in military tactics and survival techniques, panicked while a group of human volunteers outperformed them in a survival test. Ellie stood in the clearing of the dense forest, observing the chaotic scene through her helmet's visor. The sun beat down on the alien terrain, but the temperature was nothing compared to the heat building in the human's chest. This was a game, a test. But to her, it felt like much more. Humanity was being pushed into a corner by creatures that had long believed themselves superior. She turned to her team, a group of 3 seasoned soldiers, each of them veterans who had lived through the worst humanity could throw at them. "All right, people," Ellie said, her voice calm but sharp. "We've got 3 hours to build this shelter. We're not just going to survive this, we're going to make a statement." Her team nodded, but there was no time for small talk. In the distance, the alien students were scrambling, their long, clawed hands and segmented exoskeletons a strange contrast against the lush, verdant forest. They were in disarray, failing to set up any sort of viable shelter. One of the alien students, a reptilian species called the SHVAC, attempted to climb a tree, its limbs too stiff and poorly adapted for the task. The sight was almost laughable, but Ellie held back a smile. She turned to her team. "You see this? We have to do better than this. Not only are we going to show them how it's done, we're going to build something they'll never forget." The soldiers set to work immediately, gathering materials, branches, vines, and the sturdy leaves that could form the framework of a shelter. It wasn't much, but Ellie had seen worse, and they were going to make it work. "We're not here to win, we're here to dominate," Ellie muttered under her breath, the words more of a mantra than a command. A voice crackled through her comm system. It was Captain Ivanov, the lead human instructor overseeing the competition. "Ellie, we're seeing some anomalies in the alien students' performance. The SHVAC, for example, they can't adapt to the environment. And the Zelthians, God, they've never been in a forest before. They're freezing." Ellie could hear the disbelief in Ivanov's voice. The aliens were struggling, and their pride couldn't handle it. "Roger that, Captain. We'll handle it. You just focus on watching how a human can get things done under pressure," Ellie replied, her voice oozing confidence. The time ticked on. As the alien students floundered, Ellie and her team worked with a sense of urgency, carving through branches and creating an intricate, almost beautiful structure. It wasn't a treehouse just yet, it was a prototype, but it had a base. The aliens' attempts looked like nothing more than heaps of branches, with no consideration for weight distribution or structural integrity. One of the alien students, a tall, insectoid creature called the Zrath, approached Ellie's shelter with a sneer on its face, its antennae twitching in contempt. "You call that a shelter?" it hissed. "It looks like it'll collapse the moment the winds pick up." Ellie stood tall, her face a picture of calm authority. "You'd be surprised," she said, her tone icy. "We don't need to rely on brute strength and sharp claws to survive. Sometimes it's all about using what you've got, and adapting quickly." She gestured for the Zrath to step back, eyeing its structure. "But go ahead, I'm sure your shelter's much sturdier." The Zrath bristled, but didn't argue. Instead, it slinked away, its mandibles clicking in what seemed like irritation. Ellie watched, a satisfied smirk tugging at her lips. The arrogance of these aliens was starting to show cracks. They had been so sure of their superiority, but humanity was proving them wrong in the most fundamental way. As the clock ticked down to the final minutes, the alien students' panic was palpable. They had failed to secure basic materials, and many of them were disoriented, unsure of how to use the natural resources around them. Some had already resorted to eating the strange berries they had found, which only made things worse, alien toxins and poor dietary choices wreaking havoc on their systems. 5 minutes remaining! Ivanov's voice crackled over the comms. Ellie's heart was pounding now, but not out of fear. The adrenaline was what had driven humanity to overcome the impossible, and they were about to prove it again. She gave the order to finish the treehouse. It wasn't perfect, but in the time they had, it would be a fortress. The frame was solid, reinforced with vines, and the floor was covered in a thick mat of leaves. Ellie climbed into the partially completed structure and turned to face her team. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," they responded in unison. The alien students were still scrambling, but Ellie could see the panic on their faces. They had no plan, no structure to their madness. And that's when Ellie realized something. It wasn't the physical prowess that made humans strong, it was the ability to think on their feet, to use their surroundings in ways no one else could. With less than a minute to spare, Ellie's team secured the final piece of their shelter. It wasn't just a treehouse. It was a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. The alien students might have more strength and firepower, but humanity had something they would never have: adaptability. "Time's up!" Ivanov's voice shouted. Ellie looked down at the alien students as they struggled to put together some form of shelter, realizing that they had failed. And Ellie? She stood tall in her treehouse, victorious, knowing that this was only the beginning. This was just a taste of what humanity could do when it was pushed to its limits. For the first time, the alien students weren't laughing at humanity. They were the ones who were scared. Ellie Mercer leaned against the treehouse, surveying the forest around her. The once chaotic clearing was now eerily quiet, the distant sounds of the alien students' struggle echoing faintly through the air. The test had been a victory, but one that came at a cost. Ellie's chest still burned with the rush of adrenaline from the competition, but now, as the minutes passed, a gnawing unease settled in. The aliens were not going to take this humiliation lightly. "Nice work, Sarge," Lieutenant Harris said, wiping the sweat from his brow as he climbed up beside her. "That was a thing of beauty. You should have seen this wrath trying to figure out how to tie a knot with its pincers. It was hilarious." Ellie didn't smile. Instead, she scanned the horizon, where the alien students had gathered in small groups. Some of them were tending to their injured, others were huddling together, whispering in low, guttural voices. There was a palpable tension in the air. "We need to stay sharp," Ellie replied, her voice low. "This isn't over. The Zelthians are already plotting revenge. I can feel it." "Revenge?" Harris chuckled. "Against us? They're barely holding it together. They've lost face in front of their instructors, and we've got the upper hand. They're finished." Ellie shook her head, her eyes never leaving the alien groups. "Don't underestimate them. You saw how quickly they adapted. If they're embarrassed, they'll lash out. The Zelthians are fanatical, and this wrath? They don't forgive failure. We've got enemies on all sides, Harris. Don't think for 1 second that we're safe." Harris nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "So what now?" "Now we wait," Ellie said. "And prepare. We need to reinforce the shelter and make sure we're ready for whatever they throw at us next. This test was just the beginning. They won't rest until they've found a way to break us." The next few hours passed in tense silence as Ellie's team reinforced their shelter, strengthening the structure, adding traps around the perimeter, and ensuring their food supply was secured. The alien students were still recovering from their failures, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that the calm before the storm was the most dangerous part of the mission. As night fell, Ellie stood watch, her mind racing. The alien species in the competition were many and varied, each one more dangerous than the last. Some of them were intelligent, strategic, and patient, like the Zelthians, but others were wild, reckless, and cruel, like the Zrath. Ellie knew she was only seeing the surface of the battle that was unfolding. The real test wasn't just physical. It was mental. And humanity had a distinct advantage there. A crackling noise in her earpiece brought her out of her thoughts. Ellie, it's Ivanov. We've got a situation. Ellie's heart skipped a beat. What kind of situation? The Zelthians are mobilizing, Ivanov's voice replied. They've gathered their forces, and it looks like they're planning something big. We're expecting an assault within the hour. They've got heavy artillery and reinforcements from the Zrath. Ellie's stomach dropped. The Zrath weren't just a nuisance, they were a tactical nightmare. How many? Too many, Ivanov answered, his voice grim. But we're not backing down. I need your team ready. We've got no time to waste. Ellie didn't hesitate. We're on it. We'll hold our ground. She looked at Harris, her gaze hardening. Get the team together. We need to move fast. They're coming. The next few minutes were a blur of rapid preparation. Ellie and her team fortified their position, setting up barricades and reinforcing their weapons. The once tranquil forest now felt like the edge of a battlefield, each rustling leaf a potential threat, each shadow a hiding place for an enemy soldier. Everything's in place, Sergeant. Private Malik called out as he finished tying a final vine around a sharp makeshift trap. His hands were steady, but Ellie saw the tension in his posture. Ellie placed a hand on his shoulder. Good work, Malik. Stay sharp. The first signs of the enemy arrived in the form of distant rumblings, heavy footsteps, the sound of machinery being dragged through the underbrush. The Zelthians were coming, and they were bringing their full force. Ellie peered through her scope, catching sight of the enemy forces emerging from the trees. The Zelthians were moving in synchronized rows, their tall, humanoid frames adorned in sleek, black armor. Behind them, the Zrath stalked through the shadows, their jagged limbs scraping against tree trunks, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Ellie didn't need to see more to know the scale of the attack. This was a coordinated strike. Steady, everyone, Ellie ordered, her voice a calm command that cut through the tension. Don't fire unless I say so. We're not wasting ammo. The Zrath moved forward, their steps heavy but deliberate. Ellie's breath slowed as she watched them, every movement calculated, every action a potential threat. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. If she did, this would be their last night. Suddenly, the crackle of comms filled the air again. Ivanov's voice was urgent. Ellie, they've breached the perimeter. It's now or never. Ellie nodded. Lock and load. She signaled to Harris, who crouched beside her, his rifle in hand. The first alien moved into view, a Zrath scout, its massive form barely visible through the underbrush. It was the perfect target. Fire! Ellie commanded. The forest exploded into action as gunfire rang out, the Zrath scout collapsing into the dirt. But it wasn't enough to stop the wave. The Zelthians roared as they charged forward, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest as she aimed her rifle. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was war. The alien students had failed to understand humanity's greatest strength, the will to survive. And now, they were going to learn the hard way. The night was alive with chaos. The once serene forest was now a battlefield, echoes of gunfire, and the hissing growls of alien creatures filling the air. Ellie Mercer stood tall, rifle in hand, her body a machine as it moved through the battlefield with precision. Her mind was sharp, focused. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was a fight for human dignity, a declaration that humanity would not be trampled by arrogant, alien forces. Sergeant, they're closing in! Lieutenant Harris called out over the comms, his voice strained but steady. The Zrath have flanked our left side. They're coming from the rear! Ellie's mind raced as she assessed the situation. The Zelthians had advanced through the front, a sea of dark, armored figures pressing in, while the Zrath had crept around the perimeter, their deadly claws and teeth glinting in the moonlight. Every move Ellie had made was now a race against time to hold their ground. The odds were stacked against them, but that's when humanity excelled, when it was forced into a corner, outnumbered and outgunned. That was when they fought hardest. "Malik, cover the rear!" Ellie barked, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "Harris, we hold this line. Don't let them breach." Harris nodded, his jaw tight, and opened fire on the incoming's wrath. The alien creatures screeched as they were caught in the line of fire, some falling, others retaliating with quick, brutal strikes. Ellie's heart skipped as Azratha's blade grazed Harris's side, but the lieutenant gritted his teeth and fought back. There would be no surrender, not while they still had the strength to fight. Ellie's rifle cracked to life again, sending explosive rounds into the ranks of advancing Zelthians. Her every shot was a death sentence. She was calculating, slow, deliberate. The enemy had made the mistake of thinking humanity was primitive. The humans had no advanced tech, no sophisticated weaponry like the aliens did, but what they did have was experience and determination. The Zrath moved closer, their war cries piercing the air. Ellie ducked behind a large tree, using the environment to her advantage. The Zrath were big and strong, but they were slow. She saw the first one come into range, its long, segmented body rippling as it ran, and its jaws wide open, ready to tear apart anything in its path. Ellie took a deep breath, steadied her rifle, and squeezed the trigger. The shot hit its mark. The Zrath crumpled, its body crashing into the ground, momentarily blocking the path of the advancing troops. Ellie knew this wouldn't last long. More Zrath were coming. Their reinforcements were relentless. "Ellie, they're pushing harder now!" Malik shouted, his voice coming through with increasing urgency. "We need reinforcements!" Ellie's heart was pounding now. She could feel the tide turning. The human team was tough, but the odds were rapidly narrowing. Just as she was about to signal for a retreat to regroup, a strange, almost eerie silence fell over the battlefield. The gunfire slowed. The alien shrieks were quieter. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. And then it happened. From the trees on the far edge of the forest, a new figure emerged, tall, imposing, and alien. The Zelthian commander, the one who had led this assault, stepped into the open, flanked by two Zrath warriors. His armor was polished, gleaming in the faint light of the fire burning in the distance. His eyes, glowing an unnatural red, locked with Ellie's. "You humans are stronger than we thought." The Zelthian commander's voice boomed, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to shake the very air around them. "But not strong enough." Ellie's fingers tightened around her rifle. "We're just getting started, pal." The Zelthian commander tilted his head, an almost human-like smile spreading across his face. "Brave. But misguided. You can fight, but your kind will always fall in the end." Ellie didn't flinch. "Then let's see you try." She motioned for Harris and Malik to fall back behind the cover of the trees. They weren't ready to face the commander head-on just yet. The Zrath were closing in from the left, and the Zelthians were massing in the center. She needed to buy time. "Set the traps," she whispered to her team, her voice calm. "We'll make our stand here." They quickly worked, setting up the last of their makeshift traps, vines tied with hidden, sharpened branches, explosives set under rocks, and pits camouflaged with forest debris. It wasn't much, but it was enough to slow the oncoming onslaught. "Get ready," Ellie said, her voice low and steady. "They won't expect this." The first wave of Zrath entered the killing zone. As they stepped into the trap area, the ground beneath them gave way, and the first alien fell into a pit, howling in agony. The other Zrath hesitated just long enough for Ellie and her team to open fire again. Each shot found its target. Each round delivered a message: humanity would not be broken. But as the Zrath fell, Ellie saw the Zelthian commander's eyes narrow. He understood. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a challenge. The Zelthians weren't just attacking Earth. They were trying to break its spirit, to prove that no matter how hard humanity fought, it could never stand up to them. Ellie took a step forward, her rifle aimed squarely at the commander. "You think you've won? We're just getting started. And we'll finish this, no matter the cost." The commander raised his hand, signaling his forces to halt. He studied Ellie, an unreadable expression on his face. You think your species can survive this? You have no understanding of what's at stake. Ellie didn't back down. Maybe not. But we understand something you never will. And what's that? We understand what it means to keep fighting. Even when the odds are impossible. And with that, she opened fire, her shots ringing out through the clearing. The battle wasn't over yet. But humanity had already shown that no force, no matter how great, could stop them when they fought with everything they had.